Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new. My name is Sam, and in today's video we're going to be talking about the books that I read in June. This was definitely a very weird reading month for me. I ended up reading 9 books, although I am filming this video a couple days early, so I might finish one more book. And if I do, I'll make sure to include that in my next month's wrap up. I'm not really sure what happened this month. There was definitely a lot of days, mainly on the weekend, that I didn't read a single page, which is definitely very strange for me, but I did kind of want to take a step back. I feel like I was getting a little bit burnt out with the amount of books that I had read in like April and May. But 9 books is still really good, and I ended up finding multiple 5-star reads this month. So let's just jump in and talk about all of the books that I read this month. Really quick, before I get into June's reads, I wanted to mention one book that I read at the very end of May that I wasn't able to include in my last monthly wrap up, and that was Twisted by Emily McIntyre. I ended up rating this 2 stars. I really did not like this book. This is a Aladdin retelling. So we're following Yasmin and Jasper, I think is his name. And essentially Yasmin's father is very sick, basically on his deathbed. And Yasmin just wants to make her dad happy and spend time with him. And Jasper, is his name Jasper? The Jafar character wants to take over their diamond business. I just really hated all of our characters. Yasmin was infuriating. She didn't have like any drive to do anything. She didn't try to do anything. She didn't try to like fight for herself at all. It was also really predictable. I knew exactly who was the bad guy in the story was going to be. This was not for me. Not gonna lie, I have really high hopes for Crossed, which is the next and last book that's currently out in the series. So fingers crossed that one is good, because this has been a roller coaster of a series. Some were okay, some were really bad, some were really good. So we'll see. But that is the last book that I read in May that I hadn't talked about. So for June, I started the month out by finishing My Best Friend's Exorcism by Grady Hendrix. I ended up rating this 3 stars. I read the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires a couple of years ago and really enjoyed it, also by this author. So I was looking forward to reading something else by them, but I unfortunately didn't really vibe with this one. It was set in the 80s, which was really fun. It's kind of like touched on some things that my mom would talk about from her childhood, but it was very slow. Like there wasn't, like I wanted more to be happening. It was a little confusing and anticlimactic. Like once we got to the big reveal or the big like exorcism, it just like didn't live up to what I was expecting. And I didn't really go into this with any expectations other than being a little spooked, and it was going to be like your best friend is possessed. I did really enjoy the way that this was written, because at the very beginning we saw our main character meeting her best friend like right from the beginning and getting glimpses of their friendship throughout their like the life of their friendship. So that was a lot of fun. So you really got to see their friendship and see how close they were and sort of the things that they had gone to and the experiences that they had, but it still wasn't like super detailed. And some of it didn't seem like it was really relevant. I also found this in the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires, but I found that these books are more body horror, and I much rather wanted it to be more spooky, scary, as opposed to like just gruesome body horror. Because there was definitely some really gross scenes. So unfortunately, this was not my favorite. But I do want to sort of dip my toes into more horror, maybe in the fall time, because it was definitely fun switching up the genre. The next book that I read was Sugar and Spice by Lauren Conrad. This is book 3 in the LA Candy series, and I ended up rating this one 3 stars as well. The plot was really ridiculous in this one. Being the last book, we just picked up where book 2 ended off and just sort of wrapped up everything. I ended up listening to this one on audio, and I have been having a lot of fun listening to audiobooks on my way to and from work, having another story that I can put into my brain at a time that I can't like physically eyeball read, even though I still want to be reading, if you know what I mean. So I ended up listening to the first book on audio as well, and that was narrated by Lauren Conrad, which was amazing. And then this one had a different audiobook narrator, and she did a really good job as well. I really liked how she created distinct voices and personalities for each of the characters. It was very easy to distinguish who was talking and whose chapter was who. But I do feel like it wrapped up a little quick. It kind of just ended. Like I feel like we could have dragged out some of the conflicts a little bit more or given more detail to the conflicts and resolutions. Overall, this series was pretty fun and just like a silly, goofy time. The next book that I read was In the Weeds by B.K. Borison. This is book 2 in the Lovelight Farm series. And I was a little hesitant going into this book because I really didn't love book 1, but I was cautiously optimistic because I was really intrigued with some of our side characters in book 1 compared to like the main characters in that book, and I ended up rating this one 5 stars. I don't know what it was necessarily about this book. I think like the characters and the way that I related to them, but I also think that I just read this at the perfect time. I've been having a lot of like content creation fatigue, specifically on Instagram. And so I just definitely related to Evie a lot in this one. And I just loved our two main characters together. I definitely related to both of them in different aspects. And all of the little baby animals just made my heart want to burst. This romance was just so pure and adorable and just honestly exactly what I needed. So was it perfect in every way? No, but I really loved it and I'm excited to continue the series now. The next book that I read was Queen of Roses by Briar Bolin. I ended up receiving this as an ARC through NetGalley, so thank you so much. This is a King Arthur retelling fantasy romance, which was a lot of fun. I ended up rating this 4 stars. I actually buddy read this with Emily. We always have something going on. I'm really not familiar with the King Arthur story all that well, so I wasn't 100% sure what to expect going into this one, but I was pleasantly surprised. I thought it was a lot of fun. I was hooked from the first chapter. It definitely wasn't perfect. I had some issues, but I had a great time. Like I just always wanted to continue reading and see what was going on. It was very easy to read. The world wasn't so complex, but it was a little bit different to some of the other fantasy books that I have read, and I really enjoyed that. My one like big critique is that some of these chapters were really, really long, and you could feel how long these chapters were. So I think they could have definitely been broken up into like 2 or 3 chapters in some cases. In this book, we're following Morgan, who is the eldest daughter of the king and also part fae, but doesn't seem to have any powers. And she's trying to train to not necessarily become a knight, but she's training like with the knights to sort of get up some strength. But when she turns 21, 22, she'll be going to train with the priestess, I believe. I feel like every time I sit down to do these videos, even though I've started taking notes, I head empty, no one home. Can't remember a single detail from any of these books. But she's tasked to go on a quest to try to find something. And we sort of have some like rivals to lovers situation. This also includes some very dark themes, so definitely check the trigger warnings if you have any triggers. But I had a great time. I love like the beginnings of the different relationships and friendships that we're getting so far in this book. And I'm very intrigued to see what's coming next. The ending was very intriguing. I found our main character, Morgan, to be pretty relatable, but she's also very naive, sort of typical first book in a fantasy series. So I think there's definitely going to be some character development to come in the rest of the series, but overall, had a great time. The next book that I read was 6 Scorched Roses by Carissa Broadbent. This is the novella that goes in the middle of the Crowns of Nyaxia series. I ended up rating this 5 stars for a novella. This story had so much depth and was so emotional. I finished the book and was like, I can't rate this any less than 5 stars. I don't know what Krista Broadbent has put into this series so far, but it's phenomenal. I felt like you could really connect to the story, and the way that the time jumps in each chapter was set up made a lot of sense. You didn't feel like you were missing anything. You really got a full understanding of what was going on and sort of the relationship that's being formed between these two characters. It was just so beautiful and emotional, and I could have easily read like a 400-page book about this story. So if you haven't started the Crowns of Naxi series yet, I would highly, highly recommend it. I have been absolutely loving it so far. I cannot wait to get into whatever the next book is called. So the next few books are in my mood reading for a week, so a chaotic reading vlog. I'll have that linked up in the cards if you haven't seen it yet. But the next book that I read was Happy Place by Emily Henry. I definitely went into this book with pretty high expectations. I just had a feeling that I was going to absolutely love it, and I did. I ended up rating this 4.5 stars. We're following Wynn and Harriet, who have recently broken up from a very long relationship, but are going to their friend's summer house for a trip, and they don't want to ruin the vibe by telling all their friends that they've broken up, so they pretend that they're still together. I just feel like these characters are all really relatable. It's a very realistic story. There's nothing that totally insane and out of left field that happens. It's very much just like some normal people dealing with like emotions in life the only way that they like know and have learned how. For that reason, the climax or learning about why they ended up breaking up left me a little unsatisfied. Like it wasn't anything big or crazy or something that you find in many romance books for the third act conflict, but it felt real. And I can't fault it too much for that. I definitely saw myself in both of these characters. We're also getting like a dual timeline, which I absolutely love, of like all of the friends and their relationship in the beginning, leading up to why they are no longer together, and then also present day, obviously. I also absolutely loved the friendships and the found family element that you get in this book. You can tell that all of these characters know each other so intimately. They're so close. They've been friends for such a long time that they just know so much about each other, and I think like I already kind of want to reread this book. You know it's good if as soon as you finish you want to just read it all over again. Emily Henry really knows what she's doing. I have one book left that I own to read by her, and that I'm waiting for the paperback of Funny Story. The next book that I read was Failed Kingdom by Holly Renee. I ended up rating this 4 stars. This was so much fun. I ended up picking this up on a Monday, read 2/3 of it, and finished it on Tuesday. And I usually don't do that. I can like max out at 200 pages a day, and that's like really pushing it. But I couldn't stop reading. I just kept reading and reading and reading. This was so fast and easy to read. The world building and everything wasn't too complex. We're following Naira, who is the daughter of the king of this land, but she doesn't have any powers and ends up escaping the palace and being captured by the rebellion as she's trying to escape her father's land. And we're kind of going from there. It has a lot of like fight training scenes, which I really enjoy. I love when that is included in a book. But when I finished it, I will say I don't really know what the plot was of this one. It's definitely a lot of setup for the next book. This was a lot of fun. I like ate up every little scrap and crumb that I was given and just had a great time. Honestly, like nothing revolutionary, but just like a quick, fun, fast romantasy book. Was definitely super spicy, but I do feel like some of our character relationships and opinions flipped really quickly. Like our characters were in the middle of a fight and then all of a sudden they were like in the middle of a spicy scene. I'm like, wait, did I flip too many pages here? Like what happened? Did I miss something? So I'm definitely left with a lot of questions on like what's going on and sort of some of the background information, but I'm very excited for book 2. I think the setup was really good. Like this book really laid the groundwork for the rest of the series, I think, so we'll just be able to hit the ground running. Very intrigued, very excited. Next, I read The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. Again, this was another buddy read with Emily. I think I went into this book with a little too much knowledge, a little bit too high expectations based on how I've seen other people react to this book. So I kind of expected a specific reaction for myself. And with that, ended up like guessing the entire plot of the book, which was kind of annoying and not a ton of fun. So I didn't like have that emotional reaction to some of the things. So for that, I ended up rating this 3.5 stars. I did really enjoy V. Schwab's writing. I found it to feel like really magical. There was a lot of really amazing, thought-provoking, and descriptive quotes that just really gave off like really beautiful descriptions and imagery for these characters and what they were going through. In this book, we're following Addie LaRue, who is sort of being forced into a life that she doesn't want and prays to any god that will listen to her until she ends up being cursed, where she has an unlimited amount of life, but no one that she comes in contact with remembers her. And it was just very interesting to read this book and think about how lonely a life like that would be, to not be able to leave your mark on different people or the world or anything. I really enjoyed the inclusion and discussion of art. I thought that was really beautiful. Yeah, I don't know. This book was really beautiful, but unfortunately I just went in with too much knowledge and too high expectations. Much prefer going into books as blind as possible. I find that I have a much better reading experience that way. I also said this in my vlog, but I ended up posting like a spoiler review on Goodreads for this book. So if you either have read it or don't care about spoilers, you can check that out for my like full spoiler thoughts. But I really hated the way that the ending was. Like the verbiage that was used for the ending really grinded my gears. So, and then the very last book that I read in June, I actually just finished yesterday, but that is Magnolia Park's The Long Way Home by Jessa Hastings. Just like run me over with a truck that probably would have hurt less. I was thinking about this yesterday and how this book is a 5-star book. I've rated all 3 books in this series so far 5 stars, but the 5 stars for these books feel different than my other 5 stars. Usually I have this very specific feeling that, I don't know, if you know, you know, you can't really describe the 5-star feeling, but with these books, I don't get that feeling in the same sense. But when I finished this book, like I just felt like some of my closest friends were just telling me these experiences that they have gone through and like all of these things that have happened in their life. You get such an intimate understanding of these characters and what they've been through. I just feel for them. I just want to give them all a big hug. I'm terrified to read the next book, but I also want to pick up the next book immediately. But I also don't want to be finished the series. Like I'm going through all of the emotions right now. We're picking up like a year after the first book ended, because the Daisy Hates books take place at the same time as the Magnolia Parks books, but we're following different characters. So this takes place a year after the Magnolia Parks. The series is one of these series that like you kind of have to go in blind, but also it's very traumatic and messy, and these characters are very flawed but real. So pick up at your own risk, but I am just so happy that I finally picked up this series and I'm loving them as much as I am. Well, that was it. That's all the books that I ended up reading in the month of June. Looking back, I had a really good reading month. 3 5-star books and a 4.5. That like 3 5-star books in a month is unheard of, but so happy that I found some new favorites. Got some books off of my TBR that I've been meaning to pick up. But that's everything. I really hope that you enjoyed today's video. Let me know down below if you have read any of these books or what your favorite book that you read in June was. I would love to chat with you. I really hope that you enjoy the rest of your week, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.